Well, hello, everybody. We're so glad you're here today. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. Hopefully you know you came to see spiders. Is that right? Oh, good. It's going to be a good one. Before we get started, let's talk about a couple of things that are coming up at the museum. So if you've seen our website or any of our socials, you know that this Friday night we do have an evening sky watch in the observatory. That is free for members, and there's a slight fee if you are not members. But the observatory will be open this Friday, weather permitting, right? You guys hope for clear skies because it'll be a good one. Also, we have a new exhibit opening with an opening reception and a sci-fi night on December 2nd. It's called Treasures of Noah's Ark, and that is Noah like N-O-A-A, right? The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. And then it'll be open to the public in general on Saturday, December the 3rd. So you can come check that out. And then also one of everybody's favorite events of the year, our holiday PJ party is December 10th. So if you want to come see Santa or the Grinch, depending on how you like to do your holidays, that'll be on December 10th. And that's also our Festival of Trains weekend. So if you came last year, that was the first time for that. Great halls full of trains. There'll be trains in here too. So if that's something that you enjoy, come check it out. All right, so you guys give a big hand for our speaker today. This is Shelley Graves. You guys can go ahead and give her a big hand. Yay! So Shelley is our store supervisor here at Tellus. She has a bachelor's degree in studio art from Berry College over in Rome. But her passion and her love are these guys, right? Bugs in general, but also these fabulous arachnids that we have up here. She began researching tarantulas in high school after she discovered her favorite species was, and I'm going to say this, y'all give me some grace here, okay? There's a very large Latin word on my paper. It's Chromaptopelma, I did that one right, yeah. Got that one right, just 1 out of 2. Cyaneopubescens. Yeah. So Shelley actually has 26 tarantulas in her collection, 9 true spiders, and 2 isopod colonies. So you guys, let's learn from Shelley.
All right. Thank you everyone for coming out to see this today. I just want to preface this by saying that I'm not an arachnologist, so I'm not a complete expert, but I'm just a hobbyist and a spider lover in general. So today we're going to talk about the basics of tarantula keeping and tarantula care. If you're curious, right here on the left, that is the Carabina versicolor, also known as the Antilles pinktoe. And then over on the right, that one is the Poecilotheria regalis, or the Indian ornamental tarantula. So first, let's go over how tarantulas differ from what are called true spiders or modern spiders, depending on who you ask. So tarantulas are mygalomorphs, which means they are more old school spiders. They evolved before our modern spiders did. They have parallel downward facing fangs instead of the inward facing fangs that true spiders have. And they have 4 book lungs, whereas true spiders, modern spiders, have 2 book lungs and a spiracle, which is sort of like a breathing tube. Tarantulas also have larger spinnerets than true spiders do. Now, true spiders do have more varied features, and some have larger spinnerets, some have larger eyes. That variation doesn't really happen in tarantulas and mygalomorphs. So mygalomorphs are going to include things like tarantulas, funnel web spiders, trapdoor spiders, and mouse spiders, whereas your araneomorphs, which are the true spiders, are going to include orb weavers, jumping spiders, wolf spiders, and huntsmen. So here I've got an example photo. The one on the left is a Psalmopoeus cambridgei. That's one of my personal spiders. Her name's Puddin'. And then on the right, we have just about everybody's least favorite spider, and that is the southern black widow, or Latrodectus mactans. So, and then you can break down tarantulas even further into the New World versus Old World categories. And at the bottom, you can see I've got little examples. The one on the left is going to be an Aphonopelma chalcodes. That is a North American tarantula, also called the Arizona blonde. And the one on the right is everybody's favorite, the infamous OBT, or orange baboon tarantula. That is the Pteronocylus murinus. So, New World species tend to be a little more on the docile side. Not all of them are super docile, but generally they're a little bit better for beginners. They do tend to be larger bodied and hairier than Old World species do, and they usually live a little bit longer than your Old World species. Now, they do tend to possess less potent venom than Old World specimens. There are some exceptions, such as the Chromaptopelma genus. Those contain a type of, I believe it's called salmotoxin in their venom, and that is medically significant, but it also can be used to treat strokes. And with your Old World species, they're obviously found in the Old World, so like Africa, Australia, and Asia. They do tend to possess more potent venom. They tend to be more on the defensive side, so they're quicker to bite, quicker to bolt. And most of them do not have urticating setae. Now, urticating setae, I will go into a little bit more depth later, but it's basically hairs that they can kick off. They're very irritating. You don't want those on your skin. If I can get my slide to go. There we go. So here I've got some tarantula anatomy for you. So the picture on the left is called the dorsal view of the tarantula, and the top part, sort of the center, that's the cephalothorax. The very top piece of that is called the carapace. Then up front are those little hands. Those are called pedipalps, and they use that to help scoop prey into their mouths to help catch the prey. And obviously you can see their legs. And towards the back, they have what are called spinnerets, and that's what they use to make their webs. And that large-bodied area right there is the abdomen. And the things that the fangs are attached to right here, called chelicera, those contain the venom sacs that the tarantula uses to envenomate its prey. And then on the right, I have the ventral view, or the underside of the tarantula. And you can see the fangs, the mouth parts, the sternum here, which all the legs are connected to, another view of the spinnerets from underneath, and then if you can see them, there are little things right there called book lungs, and these are book-shaped breathing organs, I guess would be the best word, but basically the inside of them looks like pages of the book, and that's how the tarantula breathes, so it does not breathe with its mouth. Now, one of the questions I'm asked most often is if you can house the tarantulas together. Usually people will ask if I have these all in one big enclosure, which for the most part, you can't really do that. One of the species that is pretty successfully kept communally is the Monocentropus balfouri, which is also known as the Socotra Island blue baboon. Those are very readily available to keep as communal species. They've been seen in the wild, living communally. Some people also keep Neoholotheliense or some Poecilotheria species communally, but those really haven't been studied as often. So let's move on to our basic tarantula needs. They're very simple. They're one of the easiest pets to keep as long as you give them what they need. So what you're going to need for a tarantula is going to be your enclosure, which I have some examples of here. You're going to need food to feed them, which I've got some right here. And then they need clean, fresh water. So here we've got some substrate. That is very important for the tarantula. It allows burrowing species to dig underground. That's what your terrestrial species are going to stand on. And most importantly, it gives some space so the tarantula can stand and not injure itself by falling. So there are many options for substrate. I've got some listed right there. My personal preference is going to be the premixed substrates, like creature soil or reptisoil. You can get these at any pet store. Another popular and less expensive option is going to be, I believe that's Scott's topsoil. It's free from pesticides, vermiculite, perlite, and fertilizers. And then you can also just make your own homemade blend with the topsoil, sphagnum moss, small amounts of sand, and let's see, also cocoa fiber. A lot of people do use cocoa fiber. Now, I do want to say that these are not set in stone. My guidelines here are not what works best for every species, so it's important to do your research if you find one in particular that you like. So let's look at our terrestrial species. I've brought in one right here that is terrestrial. This is my Tuliotocot albopylosis. She's a curly-haired tarantula, and these live almost entirely on the surface. Sometimes they will dig. So if you'll notice, the enclosure is longer than it is tall, and I've got a good amount of substrate at the bottom. She needs about 1 to 1.5 times her body length in height there, and then underground, she just needs plenty of space so she won't fall and injure herself. So another important thing is that every enclosure needs ventilation. So we have enclosures like this that have it along the sides, or like a critter keeper that has it on the top. For her, I have a nice little mesh lid here. And then critter keepers are probably your most affordable option. I think this large one retails for about $15. So they're quite affordable if you're just getting into tarantulas. These nice ones here are a little bit more expensive. Usually I see them being called breeding boxes, but they work perfectly for tarantulas. And then, oh, and if you're curious, that is my Chromaptopelma cyaneopubescens muffin. So for arboreal species, you're going to want an enclosure that is taller than it is wide so that they can climb. That's their arboreal instinct. And they really don't need as much substrate as terrestrial species, so you can get away with about 2 to 3 inches. Some species, when they're very young spiderlings, will burrow, so they'll need a little bit more substrate, and I have an example over there after this ends. And arboreal species do tend to need a little bit more ventilation. So if you'll notice up top here, she has a very good breeze up top, and that's because they live at the tops of trees where they're getting lots of airflow. Okay, and then next we're going to look at some anchor points and decor, places to hide. So what I'm going to do here is start to set up my little enclosure. We're going to pretend we're making this for a terrestrial species. So I'm just going to set this in here, fill it up nice and full. Try not to make a mess everywhere. Okay. So the first item of decor we're going to look at is going to be some natural or artificial leaves. I've brought in artificial ones. An important thing to keep in mind if you use natural leaves, that you need to make sure it's never been treated with pesticides and that they've been thoroughly washed, so there's no risk of parasites or other little nasty critters that might injure your tarantula. So here I've got some artificial plants that I'm just adding in, and what those do is help give the tarantula a nice place to anchor her webs. And she can redecorate these if she wants to. They'll pull them to wherever they need them. So we'll just stick those in. A lot of it also is just aesthetically pleasing, so you can set this up how you like. And then next we're going to be looking at the hide, which is very important for a lot of species. They need a place where they feel comfortable and safe so that they can capture their prey and have a place to retreat and eat it. So here I have brought a little fake coconut shell like you might use for a hermit crab, and we'll just bury that under a little bit, clear her out a nice little space right there so she can hide. And then lastly, we're going to look at some sphagnum moss. Now what this does is it helps retain some moisture. Not all tarantula species are going to need a lot of moisture, so again, it's very important to research the specific one you're looking for. But the sphagnum moss does help retain a little bit of moisture better than the soil or just a water dish would. So here's a nice example of how a terrestrial enclosure might look for you. And then lastly, or not lastly, I had the food beforehand. So tarantulas only eat live food except as very small babies. So what you're going to need are some live feeders, and most people use roaches, crickets, or superworms, which I have brought in today. When you go to feed them, just make sure that your feeders are either store-bought or that you've bred them yourself at home. That way, again, they're free from insecticides or any parasites that might harm your tarantula. In general, you want to feed your tarantula something about the size of its body. Larger prey, it might be overfed, it might have some more difficulty catching it if it's very young. And you can feed tarantulas as often as once a week, maybe even a little bit more for very small spiderlings. As they age, they sort of slow down on their food consumption. So like this one here, I might feed once a month. And another thing that a lot of new tarantula keepers get worried is when their tarantula stops eating for an extended period of time. A lot of people refer to this as fasting. And what this is most likely pre-molt. And that means the tarantula is getting ready to grow. So once they've reached that size where they can't grow anymore until they shed that exoskeleton, they'll just stop eating for a while. And it's not really a big thing to worry about. Now, I didn't include a slide on it, but I will talk a little bit about molting here because it is very important. It's a very scary looking process if you're not used to it. When a tarantula molts, they will flip over on their back, and a lot of people are like, is my spider dead? Most likely it's okay. So you'll see the carapace, which is the top part where the eyes are, pop off, and they'll sort of start to like wiggle out backwards through that. After they molt, they're very tender and very sensitive for about 10 days, maybe even up to 2 weeks for older specimens. And during this time, it's very important to make sure that you don't have any feeders in there because they can actually harm a developing, hardening exoskeleton on the spider. And then lastly, for the enclosure, we have clean water. A lot of good options are out there. You can be eco-friendly and recycle some bottle caps as long as you sanitize them to use for water. You can use plastic jar lids, or you can use crested gecko bowls, which are my personal favorite. Here, I have just brought a small round plastic container from the dollar store. I'll just plop that right in the middle. So this is an enclosure ready for terrestrial tarantula. Now, a lot of older care guides are going to suggest putting either water beads or a sponge in the water dish. Tarantulas can't actually drink from those, and pretty much all they do is create a breeding ground for bacteria, so that's not really recommended. Another thing that older care guides suggest is to actually mist your tarantula enclosure every day, every couple days. That doesn't really do much for the tarantula. Sometimes it can kill them depending on the species. Avicularia, for example, are very sensitive to humidity, so a lot of those older care guides, got some avicularia killed. So if you have a humidity-dependent species, there are other things you can do, like overflowing the water dish, wetting some sphagnum moss, or using a soil that absorbs water a little bit better. And then you can also use a pipette or a syringe to drip water down the sides or near your tarantula's web. That's pretty much only the only way this girl drinks water. She's very picky. And I do want to mention some precautions because tarantulas are very easy pets, but they are also dangerous animals. They all have venom. There's no such thing as a tarantula that has been devenomed or defanged. Now, typically, like I said earlier, your New World species are less venomous than Old World species, but there are some that can require hospitalization, especially some of your Old World species, like my OBT I have over here. And also, many species of New World tarantulas possess what are called the urticating hairs, as we went over. I have a few that are very problematic hair kickers. So it's good to use caution whenever you're opening the enclosure, whenever you're cleaning, feeding, or filling water. If you want to help mitigate that risk, you can wear eye protection, you can wear gloves. But honestly, the best way to keep your tarantula from giving you attitude, from hurting you, is to not provoke it intentionally. Just be mindful of where they're at in the space and just try not to bother them. Now, a lot of people do like to handle their tarantulas. I personally have 2 that I like to handle, but the tarantulas don't actually get anything from it. It's purely for us, so you don't have to if you don't want to. And here I've got a nice example of urticating hairs. This is my Chromaptopelma cyaneopubescens rainbow cake. And she's kicked off a nice little heart shape for me of her hairs. She kicks them pretty much anytime I open the enclosure, so I gotta watch out with her. And some individuals are a little more prone to hair kicking than others. I have a Thrixopelma o'Curdy who kicks hairs anytime I move near her. Meanwhile, this species can kick hairs, but she's never done it. Okay, so let's move on to some very good species for beginners. As I've been saying, many New World species are ideal for beginners. Pretty much anything in the genera Brachypelma, Teleotocat, Afaunapelma, or Avicularia make pretty good pets for beginners. So some of the best beginner species include our Brachypelma homori. This is a species from Mexico that is called the Mexican red knee. This is one of the most widely known tarantulas. It's probably the one you think of when you think of a tarantula. They were in movies like Home Alone and Raiders of the Lost Ark. These grow to be about 5 inches diagonally. Females can live to be about 25 years, whereas males live to be about 10. And because of their long lifespan, their distinct look, they're very hardy, they make very popular beginner pets. Our next one, if I can get the slide to change, is going to be the Grammostola pulchra. This is a species from Brazil known as the Brazilian black. A lot of people refer to these as the black lab of tarantulas because they're very popular and they're very sweet. These grow to be about 8 inches, so they're one of your larger beginner species. Females can live to be over 20 years, males make it to about 8. They tend to be pretty docile and pretty slow moving, which makes it one of the more popular ones to actually handle. And because of their slow growth rate, they're highly sought after. Unfortunately, it does make them a little more desirable on the market, so they're usually more expensive, usually harder to come by. Next, we have Teleotocat albopilosus, which is my beautiful curly hair here. Now, their common name is curly hair. A lot of people refer to these as the poodle of the tarantula world because of their curly hair and because of their very chill attitudes. These grow to be about 6 inches, so she's pretty much topping out on size. Females can live to be about 25 years, males about 5. And these are prolific excavators, so they like to dig, they like to rearrange their environment. And because they're very cute, very affordable, you'll very often see these being given out as freebies with other tarantulas. They're very popular pets. And there's a nice picture of one. Next is the Teleotocat vagans. They are commonly known as the Mexican red rump. A fun fact about these is they are technically an invasive species in Florida. I think it was about 1986, either a gravid female escaped captivity or was released and just proliferated from there. So these grow to be about 6.5 inches. I currently only have a tiny little baby, so she's about 1/2 inch. Females can live to be about 25, males about 6, and these make an excellent display tarantula because they're usually just out on display. They have a beautiful velvety black carapace with nice red setae on their abdomens, setae meaning hair. And again, these are very affordable. They're very often given out as freebies, which makes them a very beginner pet. Next is Avicularia avicularia. This is the only arboreal species I've listed, and this is actually the one in the photo there. This is Coco. So they're commonly known as pink toes or pink toe tarantulas, and these guys are also known as poop cannons. So they can spray their feces as a defense mechanism, and it can go up to about 3 feet if you upset them. So I wouldn't recommend handling them. I wouldn't recommend prodding at them. But they are very docile. They're not quick to bite. They're a little bit more quick moving than some of your terrestrial species, but they do make quite a good beginner pet. These do not have as long of a lifespan as some of your terrestrial species. So females live to be about 12, males live to be about 4. And I do have a mature male over there that we can look at afterwards. And then finally, we have my personal favorite, the Chromaptopelma cyaneopubescens. They're commonly known as the green bottle blue, which is a lot easier to say. And you can shorten that further to GBB. So they undergo very dramatic color changes from spiderling to adult. I have a spiderling over there. If you would like to look at it afterwards, it looks so much different than this adult photo. These grow to be about 6 inches. This is also one of the shorter lived species on this list. They live to be about 14 if they're female, or about 4 if they're male. They're very prolific webbers. They have an excellent feeding response, so they're very quick to take down prey. They chase them very frequently, and they're brightly colored, which makes them quite popular. One thing to keep in mind is that they are very fast compared to some of the other species I've talked about today, and they're a little more quick to bolt. So they make a good species if you're a beginner looking for a little bit of a challenge. And let's talk about how tarantulas can help with arachnophobia. If any of you are frightened by spiders, I'm sorry you've had to look at pictures this entire time. But tarantulas are larger, which might seem scary, but to some people it's a little more comforting because you can see where they're at all the time, ideally. So a lot of people also find them less intimidating than some of the smaller spiders that might hide around your home. And since they're in a controlled environment, you can go and look at them at your own pace. You don't have to just wonder where they're at all the time, especially if you've chosen one of these nice beginner species, because they're usually out. And watching and feeding them can serve as a form of exposure therapy. I have a lot of fellow keepers that I've spoken to that said that they bought their first tarantula looking to get over their arachnophobia, and just feeding them, watching them, being around them helped them get over that. And eventually, if you're like me, you might start thinking they're cute and see the little puppy dog eyes looking back at you and just be obsessed. And then let's talk about finding and buying your first tarantula. I thought I had some pictures here on this slide, I'm sorry. So the best practice when you're looking to buy a tarantula is to look for captive bred specimens. Some species like Poecilotheria and some Brachypelma are actually endangered or critically endangered in the wild, but they're readily available in the hobby trade, so it's best not to contribute to depleting their environment. Local pet shops are the best place to check if you would like an older specimen like I have here. If you're buying online, usually you're going to get a tiny spiderling, and they take a little while to develop, so if you wanted to get experience with a larger one first, you're pretty much going to have to look local. However, the positive to buying a tarantula online is usually they come with freebies. Usually they're a little bit cheaper as well. So it's good to look for online sellers, if you choose that route, who offer a live arrival guarantee, just so you don't end up with a dead on arrival spider and there's nothing you can do about it. And also look for one that ships overnight and in a controlled environment. That way they stay as safe as possible while they're traveling. And then finally, I've included some resources if you'd like to do some further information gathering. Tom's Big Spiders is a very popular one. He goes into detail very often about specific tarantula topics. He actually has, I think it's a weekly or bi-weekly podcast. The Tarantula Collective and Tarantulas.com have some pretty good care sheets for a lot of different species. Tarantulas.com also has a lot of this information that I've gone over today if you'd like a refresher. So, that's the talk.
Shelley, thank you so much. That was fabulous. We're going to do some questions. Who's got a question about tarantulas? Oh, I got one right here really fast. All right. What's your question?
Tarantulas are rainbow cake? Rainbow cake? Rainbow cake?
I do have rainbow cake here, Shiloh. She's on that table.
Oh, so the question is, do we have one named Rainbow Cake? And that is in fact true. If you guys have not had a chance to look at Shelley's collection that she brought today yet, they're all named after food?
Yes.
Is that, yes,
Yes,
they're
most
all
of them are
named after
sweets.
food and have very fun names. So definitely check that out when you come up here because it is fun. All right, who else has a question? Okay, I'm coming up here.
Why are all the Shelley tarantulas named after a food?
That's a good question.
I think I started doing that because it just makes them seem a little less scary. You're actually sitting next to my mother and sister. They're both terrified of spiders. So I thought maybe some cuter names would help acclimatize them a little bit easier.
Awesome. I think I saw another question this direction. Is there somebody who had a question over here? All right. Oh, yeah. What's your question?
We're looking at some.
Okay, it's okay. You can read it out.
Says, how many different types of tarantulas are there?
How many different types of tarantulas are there?
So currently there are 1,040 described species, but that is subject to change as research is done, things get shuffled over. Brachypelma actually just had a lot of changes. I believe a lot of Teotocot species used to be in the genus Brachypelma.
Very cool. That was a good question. Who else has a question?
I think we've got one up
Oh my
here.
goodness, up here in the front. Y'all are making me get all my steps in. I'm happy about that. All right, here we go.
Can a tarantula kill a person?
Can a tarantula kill a person?
So there have been no recorded deaths from a tarantula bite. The only person who might be really injured and require hospitalization is going to be a very young child, a very old person, or someone who's either allergic to the venom or has a weakened immune system. But like I said, there haven't been any recorded deaths.
All right, I got another question right here.
Well, we gotta hold them.
Oh, do we get to hold any of your tarantulas, Miss Shelley?
Unfortunately, tarantulas, since they can bite, and this isn't an environment they've been in before, I really don't want them biting someone today. I do have molts that you're welcome to touch.
Very cool. All right, I think I saw another question right here. All right.
Have you ever been bitten yourself?
I actually haven't been bitten.
Ooh,
I try to be very cautious around my spiders.
you're a tarantula whisperer.
I know.
That's impressive. All right, who else has a question? Oh, I'm going to come over here and then I'll come back, okay? Because I saw that you have like 4. I'm very excited about that. All right, what's your question?
How many colors do tarantulas have?
That's a good question.
That really depends on the species. Honestly, tarantulas come in almost every color of the rainbow. There are purple tarantulas. I have one that is green, blue, and orange. A lot of your tarantulas are going to be black, white, or brown, but you can find them in a very wide variety of colors.
Very cool. All right. Okay, I'm coming for your second question. I'm ready.
If the babies don't eat live insects, then what do they eat?
So what you'll do is you'll chop up the feeder for them until they get to the right size to start hunting their own prey. They'll scavenge when they're very young.
You're such a good mommy. Cutting up your kids' food.
I know it.
All right, I saw a question up here.
How do you know if it's a boy or a girl?
So there are a couple different ways. One of the ways is ventral sexing. That one's a little bit less accurate. The most accurate way to sex a tarantula is going to be looking at one of their molts. You'll rehydrate that and look at it under a microscope. And females have what's called a spermatheca. It's differently shaped in every species, but basically you'll look at a guide online and you can see if it has those parts. The easiest way is basically just to let it age, and if it becomes a male, it will grow different parts. Once it matures, it will grow, most of the time, hooks out of its tibia. There are some species that don't have that, but every species get what's called emboli on the end of their pedipalps. And those sort of, they're called punching bags, so they're very noticeable.
Awesome. And you have a question right there? All right, I'm coming for you.
What's your favorite species of tarantula?
My favorite species is the Chromaptopelma cyaneopubescens. That's the green bottle blue. I actually have 2 of them. I have an older specimen and a small spiderling.
And she said that very fast, so y'all know it must be her
Chromaptopelma
favorite.
cyaneopubescens.
Yeah, very fast. All right, who has more questions? Oh, another one over there. Okay, I'm coming. And I'm coming back up there. All right, what's your question?
How big can a tarantula get?
That's a Good question.
So I believe the largest species of tarantula is the Theraphosa blondie. Those can reach diagonal leg spans of about 12 inches.
Ooh, that is a big, hairy spider.
It is.
All right, coming up here. All right, what's your question?
So out of your list of tarantulas, which one would you most recommend?
Out of my list, I would really recommend the avicularia. I've actually gotten 4 of these locally. They're very affordable, and as long as you practice proper husbandry, give them what they need, they're very easy to care for and very inexpensive.
All right. Oh, I see a question over here. You guys have a lot of questions. This is not a bad thing. This is what we were hoping for today.
Yeah.
All right.
How old can they get?
That one also really depends on the species. There are some that can live to be over 30, and there are some that have lifespans of around 2 years. So it varies very greatly.
All right. What's your question?
Which tarantula is your favorite?
So my favorite out of my collection is going to be my Chromaptopelma cyaneopubescens spiderling, and her name is Muffin.
Muffin. Love it. All right. What's your question? Right here.
Why are tarantulas so fast?
Why are they so fast? That's a good question.
That is, again, it depends a lot on the species. Most of your species that are very quick are ambush predators, so they have to be fast. That way they can catch their prey as it tries to escape them.
All right. Last one on your list. Let's hear it.
It says, why are old world versus new world less aggressive?
So old world species, I'm not sure exactly on the evolutionary reasoning. A lot of the old world species do tend to be from harsher environments, so that might contribute to it, but I'd honestly try to find some more information on that.
All right. Let me check my time. All right. I think we got time for a couple more. I'm coming over here. What's your question?
Is it true tarantulas are bigger in Oklahoma?
So I know in Oklahoma there are a few species of Chromaptopelma. I'm not sure if the environment really helps them get big, but they can get pretty long.
All right. Coming up here. Oh, and then I'm coming over there. All right. What's your question?
Okay, so actually my grandmother asked me this, and she's like, I wonder how many other different kinds of species she has at home.
Oh.
Okay, not just tarantulas. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that.
Okay.
Because I have a few different species of jumping spider. I think I have 8 different species of jumpers, and then I have 2 Agelenopsis and 1 wolf spider, so that's 11, I believe. And then most of my tarantulas are different species. I only have a few duplicates. So if I had to estimate, I'd probably say that I have close to 30 different species.
That is a lot of spiders. All right, up here, what's your question?
What's your least favorite type of spider?
Oh yeah, you gotta go both directions.
Okay.
What's your least favorite?
Least favorite. If we're just talking about tarantulas, my least favorite, I'm not sure of the scientific name, but they're called Thailand black. They're pretty aggressive, and they're a little scary for me.
Oh, I walked away. That was my mistake. All right, what's your question?
What's the most poisonous spider?
I believe the most venomous one is the Thailand black. There might be something that I'm forgetting about, but it's definitely an old world species.
All right, guys, I have time for one more question. One more. That hand went up quick. All right, last question.
How old were you when you got your first tarantula?
So I actually just got my first one this year, but I've been reading about them, researching them since I was like 12 or 13. I amassed this collection quickly.
Well, Shelley, thank you so much. Let's give her one more round of applause, you guys. Thank you so much. Please make sure you fill out your surveys on your tables. We would love your feedback. It helps us develop more and better lunch and learns for you in the future. And also, if you're not already a member and you joined us for this today, remember that this is free if you're a member, and you can come do more of these and other stuffs too. So definitely check that out or give somebody one for a Christmas present. Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.